Hello, 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 and welcome back to Fantasy Football Scouts Scoutcast. It feels like it's been a little while, I'm not going to lie. We've had the international break. It isn't completely finished yet. There are a lot of other teams playing at the moment. We were all on wildcards last week, and I'm sure it all went well. As always, I'm joined by my lovely twosome. Gruesome twosome? Lovely twosome. Let's go with that. Joe, how's your international break been? Have you enjoyed the break from FPL so far?
I have. It's been nice, but it's good to be back for FPL, and it was also good to see some open play England goals last night. Me and my son were all settling down to watch another boring match with England, and yes, who knows? It was an amazing match.
Yeah,
Very happy.
It has been a while, hasn't it? Actually, like thinking about watching England matches recently, it's been a bit of a slog. So at least we had an exciting one last
I know,
night.
and I had Mason Mount in game week 1, so I was ahead of the curve.
Good. And we are also joined by Seb. How is it going, Seb?
Evening, mate. It's going okay, thank you. Like you say, been a little while. I was looking back at our teams just before doing this, going, "Oh, I did that. Weird. That feels like a lifetime ago." But yeah, we had in that break, we had my son's first birthday, which was lovely. We did the old cake smash.
Oh, yeah.
You put him in his high chair, put the little chocolate cake in front of him, and then watch him entirely ruin our kitchen with it, basically. It was really good fun. Nice. It was lovely. So how are you, my friend? How are you?
Yeah, no, not too bad. I'm not going to lie. I haven't even opened up the FPL app. So when I was doing the slides about an hour ago to get ready for the show tonight, that's the first time I see my overall rank because that's how happy I was with my wildcard performance. Don't want to give too much away, so I'm going to tell you soon. But yeah, not overly impressed, unfortunately. There's an awful lot of wildcards that were played last week. There's an awful lot of wildcards being played this week as well. People chasing price rises that haven't really happened so far. But apart from that, Joe, what else is coming up on the show tonight?
Right, Joe. Yes, we'll look back on our wildcards in game week 8. We'll look at premium options. They're under consideration. Can we hokey cokey them in and out, or is it best to stick to one or two? But which ones, if we do? Chelsea have a new manager, and so too Brighton. Seb deep dives into the changes at the top 4 side and that other London club as well. Just before we were coming on air, I was getting all jumpers for goalposts, reminiscing about the glory days of Brighton's managers and that we've had in the past. So I was getting misty-eyed thinking of Alan Mullery and Barry Lloyd and Steve Gritt. It was wonderful. Anyway, Andy is going to help out those looking for a value striker, which will make Seb's mocked up game week 9 side, wildcard side as well. So we have that. We have a mocked up wildcard side, and there's going to be a value striker in that, but people who are in the market for a value striker, Isaac owners, that's me, and people on wildcard as well. I know everyone really. Plus, we'll look back on the community team's decision to captain Nick Pope. I really don't know what's going on there, and reveal our plans and captaincy for game week 9. And we've got some community questions and answers with teacher Andy taking charge there. As Never Give Up FPL, by the way, is a poster. Asked us, he hopes that we have a question about some cheap defenders in that section. So I've reminded him to ask us towards the end, but if he forgets, hopefully I'll remember and come up with some names.
Lovely stuff. And Seb, it's worth noting as well, Joe's already mentioned it there about Captain Pope. Was that something that you kind of went, no, do you know what, the community's wrong, I'm captaining Pope, or was it a bit of a mistake?
I wish. Yeah, that is entirely my bad. So we did a wild card basically by poll on Twitter, which I thought was going fine, and it was going all right. We picked a good team until the last minute. So was it a couple of Saturdays ago, 3 Saturdays ago? Yeah. I was doing the deadline stream. So I tweeted like the captain poll, obviously, and I took a photo of our team to go with that so people knew who we had. And what I do when I do that is I stick the captain and vice for the photo just on like 2 really unlikely players to try and avoid any like unintentional bias. What I would normally do is immediately change it back to like the most likely captain just in case I'm an idiot. But because I was going straight to do the deadline stream and I knew the poll would, obviously expire while I was doing that, I forgot to do that. So we ended up with Pope captain and I think Nico Williams vice captain. 0.6 XG against, was it, or something? It was Newcastle's second lowest XG against of the season. Can't believe that didn't come in.
I literally, because you messaged me as well, didn't you?
I messaged you going, oh,
And I was like, oh my God.
funny.
Oh, yeah, I was like, oh my God, that's Seb's team. I was like, what's he doing? That's Seb's team. And then he was like, oh, it's Community Team. I was like, oh.
I'd rather it had been my team, because at least that would only hurt me. It was
sure. Yeah. I know what it was. It was slowly getting closer to your team, wasn't it? And I reckon Joe slipped you a couple of 20s, and that's it now. Community Team's ruined. Not only that, obviously, that was some fun times. We've got some kind of sad-ish news, Seb.
Yeah, I suppose.
Kind of sad.
That's a matter of perspective, isn't it? Really, rejoice or not, as you choose. Yeah, it's my last one for a few weeks tonight. I'll be back after the World Cup. But otherwise, you either have to do without me, or you can finally watch the Scoutcast, because I won't be here for a bit. Your choice.
And I mean, obviously, you're going to be gone for a little while up until after the World Cup because of family reasons, basically, isn't it? But we do have a little bit of a Muppet that's going to be replacing you for a little bit, but I won't say any more. All right, and he's happy for me to call him that as well.
A Muppet for a Muppet.
Exactly. So, shall we have a look at our points? Ugh. Go on then. So my points on wildcard. I managed a red arrow on my wildcard, over 100k red arrow. So lovely stuff. 53 points. I had Pope and goal, Perisic, Cancelo, Trippier, Bowen, Martinelli, Ward-Prowse, Andreas Pereira, and then I had Haaland, Kane, and Mitrovic. I did captain Kane, which actually turned out to be a really good decision. I fancied that the whole time. I was going to go for Kane captain. Could have had a few more. Obviously, Spurs put Leicester to the sword, didn't they? He got 20 points as my captain, so I was quite happy with that. I did put Maddison on the bench and brought Andreas Pereira in because I brought Perisic in. So I thought I didn't fancy Maddison against Perisic, and I just thought, let's go for it, as if it was a free hit almost, and kind of stack a certain team. So I kind of stacked with Spurs there and put Maddison on my bench. Is what it is. 53 points, not amazing. The team doesn't look too bad moving forward next week. And obviously I've got Maddison that I can bring straight in, so that's lovely too. Didn't go with Isak. He was somebody I was looking at in terms of going De Bruyne and Isak instead of Kane and Ward-Prowse. But Ward-Prowse and Perisic are going to be James and Zaha after I roll the transfer this week. So it's not too bad. I could have had an extra... Huh?
Maddison bench, why?
Because he was playing Spurs, and I brought Perisic
last Scoutcast, we were talking about that tweet from Andrew Gow. We were saying, have a look at that tweet. He's one of the best scorers against the top six.
But is that
so you just never bench him?
Is that a stat though? I don't know.
Like, it is a stat because he did it again.
Would you, if Leicester had like Arsenal, City, and Chelsea, would you bring Maddison in?
Yeah, I'll get him in.
Okay, I mean, I'll hold you to that.
I'll rephrase that. The more likely scenario is, if you get Maddison in for good fixtures, but then his fixtures turn, do you keep him? And the answer to that is yes, because Maddison's a form player.
So why did you only get him in this week?
Because I've got it.
You only got him in for good fixtures.
I've got him in for these good fixtures, but will I keep him for the bad fixtures? Probably, because he's a form pick.
We have to
now. And I wish I'd got him in at the beginning. I was wrong. We were all wrong not getting him in. He's blanked twice this season. Didn't play another time. Rest of the time he's got returns. So he would have had really healthy returns from him. I wish I'd
be
got him in
against City.
I'm very tempted.
I looked at it and thought, well, if I'm getting Perisic in, because Perisic was a last minute thing because it was kind of saying that he was going to play. And I thought, well, if I'm getting Perisic in, I'm getting Perisic in because of his attacking output and also because he's likely maybe going to keep a clean sheet. So I thought I'll keep him in and then I'll bench Maddison. And I saw it as almost like a free hit. And if you're doing a free hit, you don't go with a midfielder that's playing against your defender, do you? So I took it as that, and knowing that I was having Maddison for the fixtures that were coming up, basically.
So he's, because I never look into it like what he does in bad, because FPL Spartans quite rightly points out, does that mean that he's less likely to score against the likes of Forest? He actually really good against those teams as well. But so he's more likely to haul against these teams.
He can't be great against every team.
He's great against everyone.
He's just Salah.
He's quietly, consistently one of the best players. But when his form dips off, it's not to do with fixtures. It's not like, Maddison's facing a really tough fixture, I'm not going to score. It's just because his form's rubbish or he's injured or something like that. So
I still wouldn't own him against those big teams. I just wouldn't.
I'm looking forward
like,
to it. I'm going to play it. I'm going to triple captain.
But you just haven't in the past. Like there's empirical evidence. You just haven't, though, Joe. We can look at your teams.
And I was wrong not to, because I would have missed out on all those points.
If I wasn't already taking a break, I'd be gone.
And we were all wrong. We've all been neglecting Maddison against these top sides. But luckily, last week, I managed to get him in my side.
Okay. Right. Anyway.
And also, why have you got Ward-Prowse?
Why have I got Ward-Prowse? For 2 weeks, 90-minute man. I just needed someone for 2 minutes. For 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
I needed someone for 2 games against before they moved to Zaha. And I didn't fancy Saka. Saka was the one that came out on top of all the projections and stuff. But for some reason, I didn't fancy it. Obviously, he's the one that got 2 assists against Brentford. But yeah, I toyed with him. I also toyed with Foden, but I was worried about Foden. Basically, the other 2 options I could have gone with would have done much better than Ward-Prowse. But then Ward-Prowse has got Everton this week. He had 2 nice fixtures before Zaha.
No, I'm not going to slag off Ward-Prowse. I like Ward-Prowse because he's a bit like, these players like Maddison, Ward-Prowse, Zaha's another one as well. These are players that you sort of don't really get in your sides, but then you sort of do. And then at the end of the season, when you tot up who's got the most points, it's Ward-Prowse, it's Maddison, it's Zaha, it's all these types of players. They're really good. And so I don't mind the Ward-Prowse pick. It's a bit unusual, but it's good.
Also, Pereira, like, obviously Fulham were playing. Who were they playing now? Was it Bournemouth? I can't remember who they're playing now. I can't remember who they played. It was so long ago. But they scored 3 goals, and unluckily for us, like it was Willian taking some of the corners and that, wasn't it? So he was taken away from Pereira. So in looking back at the decision I made, I'm happy with the decision I made. It was just, it could have gone either way, really. Ward-Prowse is annoying that he only got 1 point, but there you go. Let's have a look at Joe's points then.
Pereira was Forest, by the way, that team.
Forest, that was it.
To have next.
Of course, yes. So Joe got 66 points. Joe, do you want to talk us through your team?
Well, yeah, I was really happy until they all got injured. But so nice, really healthy Green Arrow. I'm up to 501k. I put in the notes because of my 101k last season. I'm top 501k, and but I was just on the edge of just nearly top million. So that's quite good. I feel happy with that. So KDB Kane was the big decision. Obviously went for KDB, and much of a muchness really with that decision that week. Dumping Arsenal were the main fears, so I knew that probably wasn't going to work out, that particular move. But pretty happy with the injuries. Patterson, I was overjoyed with his 6 points. Yeah. So I felt the Everton defence were looking better, and they are. And Patterson looked great until he got injured on international duty. So he's now a problem because I was relying on him for game week 12. When City and Arsenal don't play. So he's a bit of a problem now. So I've got, Cancelo, Trippier, Patterson and Pope I went in with, Andreas, De Bruyne, Maddison and Martinelli. And then up front, Mitrovic, Haaland and Isak, who got 9 points despite being rubbish most of the match.
Yeah.
And on my bench, I've got Ward, obviously, with his 0 points. I was listening to FPL General's podcast. They had a great stat that out of the 20 teams, Ward is actually the 21st best goalkeeper. He genuinely is, because obviously some teams have played more than one goalkeeper. So he's the 21st best. So he's literally the worst goalkeeper. Nico Williams 1 point. Zaha, I've already got in. So I was thinking ahead there. Bench, James already got in. Bench there. That's what I've got. But there's some issues there. Isak and Patterson. I've left the 0.9 in the bank. I was 50-50 on De Bruyne to Salah. And that decision's probably been made for me and not to do that because I'm going to replace Isak. But more on that in a bit later.
Yeah, I suppose that's the biggest thing now is with the triple City, isn't it? And with the injuries that have come up, is that you're having to look at moving those City players out, or some of them out maybe, by game week 12, isn't it?
What was that again? Sorry?
With those triple City there, you're going to be looking to move some of them out, but now with the injuries, that's going to be harder.
Yeah, De Bruyne, game week 12, I've got 4 players who won't play, so I hope to bench Cancelo, Haaland and Martinelli and play the rest, but that relies on that 11 being good. De Bruyne will go, and we'll talk about premium options in a bit as well.
Yeah, lovely stuff. And Seb, 57 points for you, Seb. Triple Newcastle defence. Ooh. Talk us through it.
I had to back the Pope captaincy, didn't I?
Philip Billing, mate. Philip Billing for the win.
Oh, I know. So yeah, I had Pope in goal for his 2, Cancelo with 9, Trippier with 5, and Fabian Schär with 2. Bowen with 2, Saka with 9, Martinelli with 3, Andreas with 1 over Maddison's 7 on my bench. Captain Haaland, finally captained Haaland. He finally played 90 and all he did was score 1 goal. Kane was vice captain with 10. Not much in it between like him and De Bruyne in the end, so I'm not too worried about that. And Mitrovic with 2, of course. Probably expected more from him, but then so many people had him. My team's pretty similar to yours, Andy, and a pretty similar score as well. In fact, like I got 4 points more and got the world's tiniest green versus a small red for you, which seems silly and probably shows still how tight it is and how it just doesn't matter all that much, a week-to-week move. The triple Newcastle defence, I think I mentioned it earlier with the Pope captaincy. I think it was their second lowest XGA of the season, so maybe a little unfortunate, but it was still like 0.6 or so, so can't complain too much. And Schär will probably be benched going forwards now. Obviously, I've got James there. And yeah, could have played Maddison, but for me, it was just simply Andreas or Maddison. I wanted to start everyone else. And Andreas had Forest, which just felt like a better fixture than Tottenham to me, but clearly I was wrong about that one.
Yeah. 57, like you said, green arrows, you've got to be quite happy with that, really, haven't you? And obviously you wild card for more than 1 week. That's the other thing as well, remember.
Yeah.
So lovely stuff. I mean, it has bunched us up a lot more because obviously I think 2 weeks ago, I think I was just hovering at under 100k and so was Seb, and Joe was around 900k. And now, one good week, which is about 10, 13 points difference, we've all bunched up completely again, and we're between 500k and 250k. So, like Seb just said, it really is so bunched up in the middle there. And of course, a lot of these wildcarders have now gone away from the template a bit. So all these players that had Saliba and Jesus still and players like that and got 20 points just from them two, obviously are all kind of moving around us as well. So lots of differences now, but this is when it gets exciting, which is what we want to see. So, Joe, talking about premium players there, you obviously mentioned about KDB and Salah before. I've got a table up here because you're going to talk us through some of these kind of premium players and how we're going to play with them moving forward.
Yeah, no, I've got 2 pictures, hopefully. There's the premium players schedule. Have you got that one? That would be good.
I do, yes.
If you put that, is that one up on screen at the moment?
It is indeed.
Hopefully it's the one that I corrected during the day. I had Son and Kane playing BHS, which is British Home Stores, for those who remember that, rather than Brighton Hove Albion. This is Brighton Hove Albion one. Thank you. Yeah. So what I've done here is I've just looked at the next 4 fixtures for them. So obviously Haaland and De Bruyne have the same team. They play Manchester United at home. Then they got Southampton and then Liverpool and then a blank. So a mixed bag there, but it's that Southampton game looks the best one there. So if you're going to captain Haaland, you think, I'd be happy to captain him any week, really, but especially against Southampton and De Bruyne as well. Sort of comes into the equation as well if Haaland's not playing for any reason, but it's certainly a player to own. And then Salah, well, he's got Brighton. And so we're going to talk about, Seb's going to run us through Brighton and their new manager a bit later. That, I don't know, there's question marks there, but Salah could do really well. He scored 8 out of the last 10 matches against Brighton. So he could do really well, but it's a new manager. I don't know. Brighton defence has been quite good so far. So will that remain the case? But then he's got Arsenal and then Manchester City. So that's not so good. And then the West Ham at home in game 12, when we all want a player like Salah, because Haaland is blanked then, and he probably would have been our captaincy anyway. And then Kane and Son, they have Arsenal, Brighton away, and then Everton at home, which is a good fixture, game week 11, and then Manchester United after that. For me, looking at this schedule, I've got De Bruyne. I would like to keep De Bruyne next 2, and then game week 11, switch to Son against Everton. And then keep him for that Manchester United game as well, and then reassess a bit further down the line there. But I quite like the idea of getting Son in because Son's been really good recently, very recently. Apart from that hat-trick as well, international duty. Could this have kick-started him? We all know what he's about in terms of huge hauls. So he's a player that could do us really well, and he could be a bit of a differential from those going for Salah if we think Salah might perform there. So I don't know about you two really. Who have you got at the moment as a premium, and who are you looking to get? Do you have a sort of a plan in mind, either of you?
I think we've roughly got the same plan actually, because we've both got Kane and Haaland, haven't we? So it's going to be downgrading Kane and upgrading to Salah, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so a big part of Kane over KDB for me was that game week 11 captaincy. Everton, is it, I think?
Yeah.
So I'll be doing nothing this week, probably similar to yourself, Andy. Then Zaha in for Saka in a couple. And then I'll have one more transfer with the one I'll get in 11 or whenever it is to do Kane plus Bowen to say like a Solanke plus Salah. I think I could squeeze Tony in, but we'll see how that goes at the time. Obviously, that is booking a few transfers, so I'm sure that could change. But yeah, similar to yourself, I think we've got a plan. So while obviously looking at this is interesting, you know, your Sterling's interesting, your Son, yeah, sure, of course, a hat trick is tempting. Although I'm interested to know what you would have thought before that, Joe. I think I'm probably locked into my plan.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much the same plan. I'm pretty much the same plan in terms of it was always my plan to not carry on past game week 11 with Kane up top, because I didn't like having Kane and Haaland up top, but I like Kane's fixtures and the fact I could captain him last week. And then after that Everton fixture, it makes sense to downgrade and then upgrade someone like Bowen to Salah, because that looks like the best captaincy option in game week 12 as well, with that blank for City and Arsenal. So yeah, I feel pretty good about that plan as well. I'm assuming anybody with De Bruyne would be looking at the same thing, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, with my plan, I left 0.9 in the bank, which gave me slightly more than enough to potentially, I didn't lock in this transfer, but to give myself the option of moving De Bruyne to Salah this time around. And as I said, it was a 50-50 call. I'm not sure whether I'd have done that, but I wanted that option. And now I think I might just keep KDB and just sort of, because I want to captain Haaland. So what might change is if Haaland is playing tonight, if there's some kind of injury, then I'm without my favoured captain. So I might switch the captaincy to some player like Maddison. But I would ideally want to get a player like Salah in to protect myself, because that's a player the masses will be getting in and captain. So if he does really well against Brighton, I don't want to miss. I at least want to own him for that. But if you're captaining Haaland, I'm very happy with that. I put Sterling in here as well, just as an option, just so that we haven't got just the same names there. Sterling has got Crystal Palace away, then Wolves at home, and then Aston Villa and Brentford away. So a lot of away fixtures there. This is why, with a premium player, you're looking at potential captaincy options. So it's that blank game. He's away to Brentford. That could be a good option. Sterling, we know, has a haul in him. I wouldn't rule out getting Sterling. And I think for my wildcard, and I would imagine a lot of other wildcarders this week, they're probably looking at getting, say, Salah in. But I think it's really important to get that midfield premium in, I think, because there's so many options. Whereas I guess you two, because you've got Kane, I think is a great option against Arsenal, but then Brighton, he could still be a good option. Everton could still be, and then Manchester United, you'll need. I mean, you could feasibly just keep Kane, but I do like the flexibility of that premium midfielder, because apart from Kane, who else is there? I mean, we all own Haaland anyway.
Yeah.
But apart from Kane, there isn't like wealth of. There isn't the Jamie Vardy of old, or there aren't Diego Costa when he was at Chelsea kind of level of. There isn't that choice there.
Yeah.
But I do like.
I think broadly it's the same strategy. Admittedly, mine involves an extra transfer. It's having a premium that isn't Salah to then get Salah again in the future.
Yeah.
I think a minute ago as well, I said I would do Kane in 11. Obviously, I'm captaining him then. What I meant is 12. I will do Trent in 11, and then Kane in 12, which would also remove some of my blank assets. So I should have a solid 11 for that 12, and also some decent captains lined up, and the Liverpool players back.
Do you know what? I'm going to say it as well. It's going to be unfashionable because of all the different players that people are going to get. I actually quite like Sterling moving forward. I think he's got, if you look at this premium list, he's got the best fixtures out of everybody, to be perfectly honest, especially with the blank for City. And a lot of people were worried because he seemed to be playing that left wing back role for Chelsea, didn't he? Like, people were worried about that. But actually, you look at Trossard under Potter, he was playing a left wing back role, but it's not really a left wing back role, is it? Like they just dominate that whole left wing, and he looked okay. He looked quite good, and I think in this under this Potter system, I think he could do quite well. And he's not a striker, and they've obviously been sometimes playing him a false nine, or he's been kind of expected to be the one scoring goals. But I think he could still do quite well. And with those fixtures, it's not awful. It's just whether you can get him in as well as Haaland and a Salah or Haaland and a Kane, because I don't think you'd want him to be your second premium. I think that's quite a big gamble. I don't know whether that's something that you agree with, Seb, because you're looking like it might be.
No, I was going to say, I was just thinking, I do think, obviously I've played my wildcard now and I'm on 2 premiums and it's probably too much surgery to try and change that. But if you're on wildcard this week, I do think, normally I'd be against 3 premiums, if only because, it dilutes the captaincy too much. But I do think over this period, with the combination of fixtures for cheaper assets and the availability of some of these players, I do think if you're ever going to go for a triple premium, at least say until, maybe 12, but maybe the World Cup, I do think now is a decent time. And Sterling is a little bit cheaper. I think you could squeeze him in. My main, we'll talk about Chelsea in a little bit and Sterling as well, just for you, Andy. But I wonder if there are any other Chelsea assets as well, because we're talking about those fixtures, but those aren't exclusive to Sterling.
Yeah.
Obviously, we all have James, fair enough. But could we go elsewhere if it's the fixtures we really like? Or is it just Sterling that you're after?
Yeah. I think it's Sterling because I know he can haul. I think that's the difference. Like, I'm looking at other Chelsea assets, and Havertz can sometimes do it, but I'm not looking at Havertz and thinking that Aubameyang is almost a non-fixture. But Sterling's the one I know. Yes, it was at City when he did it massively, but he has done it once for Chelsea this season, I think. He's the one I'm knowing can get multiple returns, and I think that's why he's the Chelsea asset I'd always look at. Don't know.
Yeah.
Be interesting. I mean, we've got a bit of a comparison table to show now.
Yes.
As we go.
Oh, that's good. Excellent.
Yeah.
So, I'll just wait for that. Is that up on the screen yet?
It is indeed. So it's showing. I didn't know whether you wanted a little intro
Yeah.
while you're waiting for it to come up.
No,
on the screen,
no, that's fine. No.
Yeah. So it's comparing all the premiums, all their matches so far, and it's ordered in minutes per XGI non-penalty, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. So we got Haaland at the top, as we know. He's got an expected goal involvement non-penalty of every 87 minutes, which is ridiculous. And then you got De Bruyne next at 111 minutes. So he's got 45 points. Haaland 73 points, which just shows if you haven't got Haaland, he's just get him in. He's just points. And De Bruyne 6 assists. Now this tallies with what Pep Guardiola has been saying about De Bruyne being the assist man. We've already known that for years, but he's less of the goal man. He's more of the assist man. But nevertheless, he has scored. Then next is Salah, expected goal involvement non-penalty every 132 minutes there. And then you got Kane, say very similar for XGI, and then Sterling 163 minutes, and then Son expected goal involvement non-penalty every 175 minutes. But we know that Son is a slight anomaly with these because he's so accurate that he will score goals that normal humans aren't expected to score. But what I found, there's a few things that are interesting here. They're all with this expected data, you always get overperformance with that. Everyone overperforms to some degree there. So in terms of, we've got the expected goal involvement delta, whether they've overperformed or underperformed. So they've all overperformed marginally, or in Haaland's case, expected goal involvement delta is 4.71. But once again, a bit like Son, he's just scoring those goals that perhaps other strikers couldn't. But it's Salah is the one that is expected goal involvement delta is in minus, really. So he's marginally, very marginally underperforming. He's pretty much performing on course, and I think that's sort of very similar to how he's been in previous seasons as well. I was listening to FPL Wire on my afternoon dog walk today, and Late Riser had some interesting stats, which is similar to this as well, that was showing that Salah's basically doing okay, doing normal Salah. His stats are normal Salah stats. So he's not too worried really about some narrative that Salah's off the boil. And I do indeed think that's the case. He's not off the boil. And as a non-owner, yes, I am worried about him playing my side, Brighton. Yeah. And I think he could do some damage. He might not though, but he very much could. So these stats here show, as we know, really, they're all really good options in different ways. We've just got to sort of marry that up with the fixtures and who we want to get in. So if you wanted to do a sort of a hokey cokey of these, so you want to get you haven't got any other fires to fight, you haven't got an Isaac or whatever, and you've got lots of players you're very happy with, you could, for example, switch to Salah this week if you're on a wild card, or you just want to do that anyway, or you already have him, just keep him. Salah against Brighton, and then he's got Arsenal against Manchester City. So you could maybe perhaps look to Son against Brighton and Everton. Or if you've got Kane, be happy with that. But Salah to Son could do. And then you can look to either keeping Son or then moving to Salah, or you could put De Bruyne in the frame against Southampton and pep up those Haaland points. So there's a lot of options here, and I wouldn't categorically. You might get some, people on Twitter or content creators or whatever who would be categorically, this is the way to do it, this is the strategy I would do. But I honestly don't think you can go wrong if you're targeting any of these lads. They're all good. They're all really, really good. Like, how can you argue against De Bruyne or Salah or Son or even Sterling as being people who can get you a good haul? It's just going to have to be your personal preference. So that's a terrible sitting on the fence. I mean, you looking at these stats, have you got anything more concrete you can give? I mean, you've already given your plan, but to be honest, they're all good, aren't they?
I guess the big thing with, if you're looking at that midfielder to bring in, I know Man City have Southampton, but that blank is going to be on the back of your mind, isn't it? So investing in somebody like De Bruyne now is going to be tough.
Yeah.
Son's the one I want to talk about massively.
Yeah.
Because Son is the one. And Seb, if I go to you first, and I know Joe's mentioned it a little bit already, you're going to hate me for saying this because you're going to say, oh, he was never gone. But is he back? Like, he was benched, wasn't he? He was benched because he wasn't performing as he was last year. So he was benched to have a little bit of a rest. And then he came on and scored a hat-trick. So is he now back? Are you going to say, well, the stats never went, so he was always here? But is he now an option that we can start looking at in our teams again?
I mean, this is just pick your narrative, isn't it? There could be a number of reasons. There also could be no reason. I think, it might even have been the last Scoutcast before he scored the hat-trick. I think we were talking about Son and we said, this is very similar to last season when he was rubbish and doing nothing, and then suddenly he scored lots of points.
I said that was key for me in wildcards as well. I said he was the one that I wish he would come back to form, and he didn't before he came back to form.
There you go. So like, it was last season we had that Kane and Son decision. And I specifically remember going Son, even though I preferred Kane just because it worked for my team better. And at first, Kane was outscoring him, and then Son obviously went on that run and did brilliantly, and I got plenty of fortune there. So my turn to be on the other side of this and not have Son and have Kane instead. But yeah, I think off the top of my head, I don't have this in front of me, I do think some of his underlying numbers were down so far this season. But again, a small to medium-sized sample. And yes, he was benched. You may know better than me what Conte said about that. But before the benching, Conte had been backing him no end, like talking him up all the time. And I think the interesting thing about this is when Son came on, there was also a little, or shortly after he came on, there was a little tweak in formation as well. Perisic had already gone from the right to the left. We saw him start on the right. And Son came more central. It was almost more of that 3-5-2 rather than 3-4-3. But then the thing with how Conte plays is it's not really, 3-4-3, 3-5-2 isn't that important because it's all about those, this is the word I'll mess up this week, automatisms, where, Conte is very prescribed in the way he gets his teams to attack, right? When the ball is here, you turn, you pass here, you make this run. And with someone like Kane and Son, that's perfect. We know Kane and Son have had that relationship in the past. And so Conte just builds around that and puts his players in the right place to receive the ball when they need it. The thing with Son, I think we've seen so far this season is when he's on that left, he doesn't really maybe suit, obviously, taking the ball with his back to goal and sort of playing it off. He wants to be breaking in behind, running behind, and making that space that Kane can find. And I wonder, and this is absolutely some speculation as well, we're seeing the underlying numbers down because of, a little bit of change of how they're building up, Conte making more of what he wants of it. And with Perisic coming in, Son is doing less of what he likes and more of what works for Conte's system. But then, to finish this very long answer, when he came off the bench, it suited him much more to his own play, but still within Conte's structure. And I think that's why he got that opportunity. But then classic Son, it was two worldies, one other break, one-on-one with the goalkeeper. We know he can pull that out, right? So it's not like he suddenly exploded and had 20 shots, 10 inside the box or something like that. He just pulled off some wonderful finishes. So I don't think too much has changed. It's just Son doing Son things, to be honest.
So the question is it going to continue? That's the big question. Would you go for Son over Salah now?
I wouldn't go for Son over Salah, but I would not be surprised to see Son continue scoring.
That is
I don't know
awful.
if the international. I don't know. I don't know if the international break comes into it because
How can either of you get Son?
Role for the country.
You're both earmarking getting rid of Kane to free up funds to get Salah in.
Yeah.
So you're just not going to have Son or Kane?
No, basically no.
I've got Kane obviously, and I'll lose him later for Salah.
Yeah.
And then it's 4 weeks to the World Cup. Can't have them all. I'm not too worried. I rate Salah with the fixtures and all that nonsense. I rate Salah above Son. Let's see.
Well, Joe, last thing on Son then, before we move on to the next bit. How much of it is as well? He was playing against Leicester because they are so bad defensively.
Well, it was tired. It was obviously tired legs and rubbish goalkeeper. And rubbish defense. I mean, they were just Leicester were just rubbish in defense. But going forward, I like them. But they just can't defend. One of the goals should have been an assist. Really, he could have squared it to Kane, I think. But he just thought, you know what, I'm amazing. I'm just going to shoot, and that he was fired up for that. And maybe I can't get into the psyche of Son, but maybe the benching was the thing he needed to say, right, okay, roll up the sleeves, I'm coming on, and have some of that hat trick. But we know what he's capable of. The decision for someone like me, who is undecided, is: do I go for Salah or Son as my KDB replacement in game week 11 when De Bruyne plays Salah? And I mean, I can't see myself bringing Salah in against Liverpool. Salah in against Manchester City, and at the same time, De Bruyne against Liverpool, I'm not sure about. So that's, for me, I would look to be getting Son in for that Everton game and hope he can do his magic against Manchester United. And when Salah has West Ham, and West Ham, I think now a very defensive-minded side. I don't think they've got the attacking verve they had last season. So they could be trickier. They might not be, but they could be. But it's again back to that point again. I don't really think there's a right or wrong, and we won't know that until the end. And that won't be whether that'll be with hindsight as well. But on paper, all of these are really great options. If someone's getting Son or De Bruyne or Salah, it doesn't. Even Sterling, it just they're all gonna get you points because these are points machines in FPL.
Well, speaking of right or wrong, then I said this is going to be the last question, but I got one more. Speaking of right or wrong, Seb, was it the right decision or was it the wrong decision if you captained Son this week?
That's such a good question. I'm not going to say it's right or wrong because
this fence is breaking how much you're sitting on it tonight.
Yeah, but you're trying to push me off into either side, and both are on fire.
It's the last one for weeks as well. You can say whatever you wanted.
Yeah, I know. I want people to remember me fondly. Maybe they won't have me back. As well be like, mate, it's gone. None of that fence sitting. So I think for me, and you were saying you were considering him, right? And I know, obviously, when looking at the projections, Son was actually up there with Kane as a good option for this fixture, especially if you're free hitting. That's quite a nice way to look at a single week. The thing that changed it was the reports that he was going to be benched, which were accurate. So I think you can approach this from two angles, right? You could, let's assume you knew he was going to be benched. I think it is then fair to say, well, if I know a player is going to be benched, it doesn't matter how good they are against tired legs off the bench, I probably shouldn't go there. If you, however, we're very, very happy for him still to get 30 minutes and backed him against Ward or whatever, fine, you called it correctly, clearly. Me personally, I would go with if he's going to be benched, I'm not picking him because that's the key information for me on this decision.
Yeah. J77 Lag in the chat says, after he captained Pope for the community team, you can't ask him about captains.
At least I knew he was starting.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So moving on to Seb's little section he's going to do for us now, which is about Chelsea. So we've got a few sections tonight from Seb. I've put up on the screen here, which is Chelsea's average positions in their last game. And it brings up some interesting things, doesn't it, Seb?
Sure, yes. So there's a couple of avenues to run down here. Firstly, I think Chelsea an interesting thing to talk about, both because we want, there's Sterling, there's Reece James to see how they're going to do under the new manager, but also there's Potter, which is a very interesting prospect for real life and for FPL. But the one big caveat to all of this, of course, is that we know Potter is quite a reactionary manager in terms of how he sets his teams up and how he changes during a match as well. He will adapt to what's happening against him in that match and find solutions. He's very, very, very good at that. And Tuchel was quite good at that as well. If anything, that was his main strength. He was less about setting a team up from the beginning. Potter maybe brings a bit more of that. He does have some solid philosophies, but he will bend them to win a match. So what we're looking at here is against Salzburg, which is the only example we've got so far in competition. And all of this, again, is based on Salzburg playing this 4-2-2-2, very narrow, very intense pressing to win the ball back. It's that Red Bull football that we see Marsh trying to implement at Leeds, although we play 4-2-3-1. So Potter is trying to find solutions to that. This is not necessarily how he will play going forwards, but it's a nice little insight into it. So if we start with what's happening defensively here, it lined up in a 3 at the back, which is Azpilicueta, Thiago Silva, and Cucurella at the left centre-back position. Now, this means Azpilicueta and Cucurella can move into those wider fullback spaces defensively, and Sterling, notionally left wing-back, but we'll obviously come on to that a bit more in a minute, and James right wing-back. They are effectively the only wide players in this Chelsea team, and on the other side with Salzburg, it's only their 2 fullbacks who are wide. Everything else is taking place in the centre of the pitch, when especially Salzburg have the ball because of how narrow they are. So what we want here is Azpilicueta and Cucurella can move wide and play, that sort of half fullback, half centre-back position. And Sterling and Reece James can isolate the opposition fullbacks, which obviously then takes us into looking at it in possession. In possession, it was almost more of a 4 at the back, where you saw Azpilicueta and Thiago Silva kind of playing the traditional 2 centre-backs in that. And they would come very deep to take the ball off the goalkeeper in build-up phases. James would then drop into that right fullback position and Cucurella would drop into left fullback. And this is then where Sterling would stop being that left wing back and go into what we can see on the graphic here is the most advanced Chelsea player on the pitch. He's number 17, top left for people watching the video. And that meant that they could really, really get Sterling up against and isolate that right fullback, get him very far forward and work the ball up that side of the pitch. We saw in some of the passing maps that Potter's plan here to work around that intense press from Salzburg, again, is to receive it deep with those centre-backs and then funnel it out wide. We saw some lovely triangles between Mount, Azpilicueta and James on the right, James being a bit deeper than Sterling on the left, who was forming triangles with Cucurella and Kovacic. Kovacic and Mount, that's 8 and 19 on the graphic, were kind of performing these wide 8 roles, with Jorginho sitting deeper in more of a 6, and then we'd Havertz floating around Aubameyang up front, moving into the channels and receiving the ball depending on which side of the pitch the ball was on. And with all of this is where we see, I guess, Potter shine. He constructs systems that work brilliantly for building the ball up in the first 2/3. So the idea here is to play around Red Bull's press, to outnumber them at the back. So we'd see their front 2 pressing against 2 centre-backs, but then these 2 quasi fullbacks that can receive the ball and progress it wide, which is where Salzburg are weakest. We see that again with Marsh at Leeds, where we are weak wide. That's where you want to attack us. And Potter, as mentioned early on, is brilliant at this. I guess oddly enough, and we saw this at Brighton, maybe with the lack of goals sometimes, is then he has maybe fewer solutions in the final third often. And I say oddly because that was kind of what Chelsea were like under Tuchel as well. So I don't have much to share here. I think it's interesting to see how they'll solve that problem. Can Sterling, really take advantage of the space that will be created for him in this almost, entire left wing space he'll have? Cucurella will be supporting him. And I think Cucurella will be very important for how Potter plays, whether it's more of a 4 at the back or a 3 at the back, because he can do that left centre back or that left full back role. And he can really progress that ball up the left-hand side, which will allow Sterling to come forward and come inside to score goals, get assists, what have you. Reece James, obviously the other interesting one. He is playing that right wing back. Yeah, tucking in more to receive the ball deeper, but I don't think his role will change too much. And I'm confident in his minutes. And I guess the last question, before I just hand it over to you two for your thoughts, is Aubameyang. We know that Broja is there at Chelsea as well, and possibly people thought could be favoured by Potter, maybe because of how he used Welbeck in the last few Brighton matches this season, end of last season. But Potter also used Morpie in the past, and I think he's even used Trossard up there. And of course, those parallels between Trossard and Sterling, as you mentioned. So for me, I wonder if Potter is, of course, he may continue with the three at the back, but is it more he's going to find solutions that fit his team and the people they're playing, rather than directly trying to carry over this, physical style striker from Brighton? And with better players at his disposal, with better players at his disposal, I think it's super interesting to see what solutions he finds to the challenges Chelsea will be presented with.
Yeah, lovely. Really nice to talk about all that. I think, Joe, it's going to be interesting now if I go to you about how, because you obviously know Potter so well from being at your club for so long. What do you look at when you look at this that kind of average position screen and think, actually, that screams for me, yes, this player did well under us playing in that position?
What was quite useful in that Chelsea game, because Potter can change his formations, and he changes them within games, and can be quite fluid, and you will see throughout a Potter season, you will see players in different positions. But what was quite gratifying with this was that he seemed to just copy the Brighton way of doing it. So you could see the Chelsea players that were being used in positions that we were very familiar with as Brighton fans. So, for example, Sterling was playing the Leonardo Trossard role, where he's a wing back, but he's not really a wing back, because if you're looking at different points in the game, he might be a bit further back, but he can move in. So I think he's number 17. Is Sterling number 17 on this?
He is indeed. Yeah.
So if you can see how far advanced he is there, and the movement there will be, if you can almost draw an arrow to goal there, and then you can see the number 9 and 29, and then the number 24, who would be that could have been either Pascal Gross or Solly March, and it's Reece James in this case. They will cross the ball past it. So this is why Leonardo Trossard as wing back was so effective, and people were not getting him at the end of last season going, oh, Trossard is just a wing back now, but that's why he was getting all these points. And this could be really good news for Sterling. So when this was quite, as someone who's watched Potter for a while, and people were losing their minds on watching this game. They were going, Sterling, why is he playing him as a wing back? Oh, he's just scored. That's why he's playing him as a...
I mean, that's exactly where the goal came from as well. Sterling scored. It came from this build-up on the left, or Cucurella, Sterling moving that to position. Yeah. And interestingly, the goal they conceded also came down that side, but it was less of the goal was created by the system. The goal they conceded was effectively Jorginho trying to jump in to recover possession that had been lost in a turnover by Salzburg's press. And he was beaten, so left a gap. Thiago Silva had to move wide, which we can see on the graphic here, even though this is in possession. You can see how that would affect it. It dragged him right out and left this big space in the middle. But that was really probably the only proper chance they conceded, I think.
So a lot of the players, so Cucurella played in that role with Brian. So that's fine. He's just there, no change for him. But where the changes could be for Chelsea, so aside from these players being in these positions here, Kepa in goal, could he be favoured? Now in Brighton, Matt Ryan was the first choice goalkeeper, and then he was dropped for Sanchez. And Sanchez was the third choice goalkeeper at the time, because he'd spotted that Sanchez was just simply better at playing out from the back. And so he might see that in Kepa as well. And so we might see Kepa as the new first choice. We don't know. Seb mentioned about the better players at your disposal. Yes, Brighton, one of the problems that has been happening over the last year or so, it's just been a lack of goals. We've had Neil Maupay and we've had Welbeck. So we've never had that sort of consistency there. There was a movement in this particular Chelsea game where Broja was involved in the passing movements and was doing a lung-busting run into the penalty box. And you didn't see that often with the likes of, say, recently you could see that with Welbeck because he's gone superhuman suddenly. But Brighton didn't really have the personnel for that. So Broja could be favoured in there. He certainly might get minutes during a match. Potter likes to change within matches as well. So you might see players coming off at half time. So we would see at Brighton Tariq Lamptey Tariq Lamptey come out, maybe get substituted at half time. We might see, I don't know, if Reece James's form dips off, we might see that. We might not. I would imagine Reece James would be one of the first names on the team sheet, but we might see those changes. So Broja could become an option. So I know we're going to talk about budget strikers, and people are going nuts over Solanke. But maybe Brozier could be the one. We don't know. But Potter's not afraid of getting in players that are sort of lost in the squad somewhere, and they're suddenly becoming integral to what he does. Pascal Gross was dropped a lot of the time by Potter. Now he's back in this season, so it's difficult to say. But keep an ear out on press conferences, please do, for Potter, and get some clues. And there was a very good reporter for the Evening Argus in Brighton, my old employers, Andy Naylor, who then moved to The Athletic, who was absolutely sensational at getting Brighton news on formations and injuries and all those types of things. And I don't know who Chelsea have, whether Chelsea have good set of reporters reporting on Chelsea for the London press or The Athletic, but I hope they do, because Andy Naylor will be he's going to be great for Brighton under different management. But his reporting there of Potter was invaluable because it's quite hard to work out what he's going to do each week. So, but yeah, that's all I can have really. It's a bit up in the air, but don't rule out some of these squad players that didn't get a chance so far this season.
Yeah, and before we move off this, just very, very quickly, I mean, Reece James just stinks for me of, my goodness me. Like, if we're talking about Sterling playing that potential advanced left wing back role, Reece James is there on the other side.
He's the new Solly March. I mean, that's an incredible accolade that he can work towards. Young Reece James can work towards that.
That's what he's got, a poster of Solly March on his wall, I think.
I think we all do.
The only thing I'd say with that is obviously, based on that one graphic there, James is a little deeper, and we did see him obviously fulfilling that fullback role, whereas when he was doing that, Sterling was left wing rather than left wing back. So maybe a bit of asynchronicity there. But I think the thing I'd really, really want to impress here is it's super interesting to talk about and look into this match. But it is one match against quite a specific opposition system. So as Joe has said as well, Potter is a reactionary manager, and I mean that in a good way. He will respond to what opponents are doing and find tactical solutions. So this doesn't mean Sterling is left wing, back, left wing, whatever that is, for the whole season. It could well just be one of his solutions he has up his sleeve.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Seb, I've got 2 slides up next. I've got one about, and I'm going to sound so Somerset here, about Zerbi, and I've got another one about your wildcard. I'm assuming it's the Zerbi one you want up next.
Yeah, let's have a chat about Zerbi.
So we got a lovely picture of Zerbi now. He's up on the pitch. He's up on the screen, and we've also got the fixtures for Brighton moving forward all the way up until the World Cup.
Sure. So the man replacing Potter at Brighton very much sounds like the first choice that they wanted there. We know they've picked good managers in the past, which Joe was talking about beforehand, and maybe he'd love to give us a run through that again in a minute. But Zerbi comes from Shakhtar, although obviously he left that due to the situation over there. Before that, he was at Sassuolo in Serie A, previously at Palermo, Foggia and Benevento. He'd also done some lower league jobs there as well. He played mostly in Serie A, I think, although did come through at Milan. And as such, similar to Potter, maybe he's had to work up through the coaching game rather than, say, having, the player profile that means he can get a big job immediately. The thing that really stands out with him is, I guess you would say, his main influences are Guardiola, Bielsa, that type of manager. He has, in fact, watched both of those managers train. I think Guardiola was with Bayern and Bielsa with Lille in the past, so he's obviously taken some inspiration from that, which means he is very much an extreme possession, press to win the ball back type manager. Nothing too revolutionary there. We know this well in the Premier League, but he is a strong example of it. And very much in opposition to the traditionalists, I guess, in Italy, where he was seen as a bit of an outsider, but did very well. Benevento did actually finish 20th in his season there, but he played some brilliant football. And off the back of that, got the Sassuolo job, where he finished 8th in consecutive seasons, I believe, playing some very, very good attacking football, and crucially, increasing their share of possession on average every single season while he was there. He topped, I think in the last season, they topped the table for passes attempted, passes completed, and short passes. So ahead of the likes of, say, Napoli, Atalanta, Juventus. And interestingly in that as well, every season, the number of touches, passes received they had in their own box and final third went up and was regularly many more than anyone else, which is often a sign of a team who like can't get out of pressure or can't actually possess the ball hard at the pitch. But the thing he loves, and he builds this up in mostly a 4-2-3-1, but sometimes a 4-3-3, is holding onto that ball real deep, possession above all else, hence Guardiola, Bielsa. His centre-backs need to be technical. I expect that to be Duncan Webster, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Also the goalkeeper, Sanchez perhaps, as Joe said. And they will play it around and work the ball up the pitch, drawing the opposition onto them. That's what he really wants. He wants to bring the opposition right out, pull them out of their shape, force them to press them, and then play around them, either over them, through them, or ideally around them and through them with technical players and create chances that way. And I think if I just scroll down my notes here for 1 second to make sure I've got the right stuff, I wanted to make sure I covered things here. Sure, there we go. So yeah, we've talked about the in possession a bit. Excuse me there. But the interesting thing that was pulled out here, this is from The Athletic, which is the bit I wanted to get up.
And by Andy Naylor, who I just name checked.
There you go.
The very excellent Brighton reporter.
Oh, well, there you go. Thank you very much for that as well. So they get the credit. This is the bit I was trying to find in my notes. The interesting bit was in 2018-19, the teams who had the most improved possession play year on year, so their share of possession improving from one season to the next, was Sassuolo in 2018-19 with De Zerbi there. I think that was his first season there, I think. And then Potter was second at Brighton in 1920, so the year later. So Brighton very much have, at least in possession, replaced like with even more like, or more extreme, if you like. And De Zerbi has said himself that he shares a lot of philosophies with Potter, but that doesn't necessarily mean the system. So I expect the three at the back to go. I expect it to be 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3. And the idea is there that the double pivot or single pivot come very deep to build the ball up. Maybe McAllister's part of that, which Potter moved into. That may mean we see Gross in a number 10 role further forward, which could be very interesting for fantasy prospects. But just before I hand over to Joe, because I think he knows more about Brighton's players than me, so I'd love to hear from him. In defence, you could probably have guessed it's a high press, a heavy press, a high defensive line. The fullbacks will push high. It's almost, that sound of like 2-3-5, 2-2-4 kind of shape. The fullbacks may well invert. I think that's more based on the quality he has available to him. And the big thing he loves in his players is technical ability. So we mentioned Gross. I think he's another one to look at, although he's been good this season already. And he improves players. We've seen Locatelli at Sassuolo. Domenico Berardi was good already, but then very good for Italy. Jerome Boga and Raspadori were the ones that came up most when I was looking into this. Some of them have now got moves to bigger clubs, and I think that'll be very attractive to Brighton and hopefully to us as FPL managers as well. But I would love to throw over to you, Joe, just to talk about players at Brighton and what that might mean for us. The one thing to keep in mind before I do is the fixtures are a bit tough during this run that Andy's put on screen for us, which I think is still game week 16. There's a couple of nice fixtures at the end, but it's after the World Cup, game week 21, give or take, that they really do have quite a nice run. It's just Liverpool in there, I think, off the top of my head. And so that might be the time, once we've learned if De Zerbi can translate his ideas to Brighton, to really jump on their players. Anyway, over to you, Joe. Thank you.
I mean, a couple of points I want to make is that historically, De Zerbi is exactly the sort of manager that should succeed at Brighton, because he forms part of their project, which started well over a decade ago in the Championship when we got Gus Poyet. What happened then was that at Brighton, under the chairman Tony Bloom, we had normal sorts of League One Championship type managers that, like, no, not disparaging Russell Slade or Mickey Adams, but we had those sorts of managers that were sort of they might run a pub, they might run a team, I'm not sure, but suddenly they looked at what Swansea were doing in the lower leagues, possession-based football, the Swansea loner trying to play slick passing, possession-based football, tiki-taka, like Barcelona at that time. And they was winning matches against these sort of giants of League One and Two and those types of players. And so Brighton looked at that and thought, this is really entertaining, attractive football, and they're winning as well. And not many other teams are doing that. So Swansea obviously went really far to the Premier League with that. And then so Brighton started that, got Gus Poyet in, and that's what we were doing it. We had one of the biggest possessions of the time of any team in the Championship. So it was clearly working. We got to playoffs a number of times. Zaha at Palace often ruined that for us. And then when Poyet left, we got Oscar Garcia in, a very similar type of methods there. got to the playoffs. Derby did us in that time, and so went. And then we had a bit of a misstep with the Sammy Hippier, which didn't work out very long at all. And then we just thought, right, we're just going to get a guy. So Chris Hughton was against the mold, really. He was I'm going to get you into the Premier League, and so he did a really great job doing that. But then we sort of went back with Potter. We went back to that possession base. And as Seb has just pointed out, apart from the guy they've just brought in, Graham Potter is the most successful manager in recent years of improving possession of a team. So they've got in another version of Potter for that regard. So yeah, there will be some differences. So the other point I just wanted to make was about the personnel. So some of the changes that Seb was suggesting could happen are, four at the back, for example. We got the personnel for that. Veltman, right back. Estupinan, left back. That can easily be done. Veltman has been playing in a back three up to now, but he's easily can play in the right back. We've got Solly March, who can play there as well. But Solly March is back. He seems to be in at Brighton for forever, but I think he was definitely a winger when I first started hearing his name and seeing him. And then he's moved back a bit, so he can play pretty much anywhere down that wing, really. So he can do that. So they have those players, and you mentioned Pascal Gross there. He can play anywhere. He just play anywhere. And Potter's played him everywhere, I think. He pop up in all sorts of places when you least expect it. But yeah, he could easily be the number 10 there. So we have all of those players to play this sort of system. So Brighton are one of those teams. Hopefully, this will be the case. Continue where they have a project and they're getting in the manager that fits that project, rather than you've seen with other teams, and people who support those teams will know who they are, who the manager, they get a manager, doesn't go well, sack them, get another manager in, and they're completely different, and there's no sort of cohesion to it at all. So I'm optimistic. I mean, it's sad where Potter went. He took the fixtures and fittings with him, and by that I mean Bruno, former captain. But apart from that, I mean, I'm very optimistic, very, very happy to see what is happening. And it's great that Seb running through that, because I mean, I didn't know a lot of that in detail about what he was doing in Italy. So it's great to hear that. I'm extra optimistic now.
Lovely stuff. But I think looking at those fixtures before the World Cup, it's probably a wait and see until after that, isn't it? Would you agree?
Yeah, which I think is nice, right? We can see if anything I've said here actually comes to pass in reality. Yeah. I think, the reason we mentioned this is because we've had this big break. He has had a chance to come in and maybe enforce some of these ideas on the squad, although, as Joe mentioned, they should be adapted it anyway. There's obviously also Potter going to Chelsea. So I think it's a nice conversation as a whole to have. Chelsea for now, Brighton perhaps for later, I think. And for me, I think maybe me and Joe are in agreement here. The centre-backs, potentially, bonus from passes.
Yeah.
And I think that would be Duncan Webster, because he needs them technical.
Yeah. Webster in particular
is
absolutely ideal for that. He's a very good passing centre-back. So, yeah.
And would you say Sanchez in goal? Again, should keep his place and maybe even some bonus from passing?
Yeah, I would imagine so. That would definitely be the case. I don't think we have the quality back. I think we did get a reserve keep from somewhere, but I think he went out on loan again. But I mean, Sanchez is so locked in, I think, even under the new manager, that I haven't really looked to see who the reserve keepers are.
Fair. And then I think further up the field, maybe for me it's a wait and see on, obviously Trossard is brilliant if Welbeck can stay fit, but maybe Gross for me. The big thing that seems to be consistent throughout his time at other clubs is he wants those technical players, because it's all about that intricate passing. So I think Gross probably will be a favourite of his, and is likely to be even further up the pitch. So maybe I've got an eye on him.
Well, wait till he gets a load of McAllister as well. He's going to think, hang on a minute, I've got Messi in this team.
Well, I can see, so if he does play that 4-2-3-1, but obviously like the deep double pivot, you would obviously see Caicedo and McAllister being perfect for that, I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean, the whole team is so technical now. I mean, they've been, the Houghton era is well and truly gone, obviously, and all they're used to is Potter and being highly technical and also tactically technical as well. So he's inherited a really good side, and it's quite rare because most of the managers get sacked or something because the team's not doing well or something. So it's quite rare that you'll get a Premier League manager moving to another Premier League side, especially when they're top four. So he's inheriting a top 4 side. So
well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you said that in
Currently.
in the introduction, it took me a second. But I mean, Brighton are an intelligent club. They will have had a list for as long as Potter's been there, just in case he leaves. So this very much does appear to be their first choice in the moment. And I think the interesting thing to see over these few fixtures is I expect him to be able to get the team to attack well, because he's very much about that. It's whether the team can take on his ideas further at the back, implement, and we know they've been brilliant under Potter, but implement that possession game, that very heavy possession game, and the press to the point where the defense stays solid as well.
Yeah.
Because sometimes with a transition like this, it's not much of a transition, but we've seen, even in Guardiola's early days, really wanting to play out from the back can maybe take some time, and there can be mistakes that will lead to goals. But I think we have time to see that in FPL terms.
A quick mention for the Sky game that I always give one mention to a week. FPL Spartans in the chat asked that Webster, could he be back as an option after the City game in Sky? And you get points for passing there. Yes, Webster, keep an eye on it. But Webster could become an absolute goldmine of bonus points in the Sky game if what we think will happen happens.
Yeah, I mean, if Brighton are topping the league or coming second to City for passes completed, there could be a few nice picks in there.
Definitely.
Lovely stuff. I am a little bit aware of time, and obviously we've got 2 big chunky segments to come up next, but we've had so many compliments in the chat about that analysis from both of you, so thank you so much for that. It's lovely. Seb, we've got your potential... Well, it's not a potential one because obviously you've used your wild card. But if you were wild carding this week, you've kind of mocked up a bit of a team for us, haven't you?
Yeah.
Although I'm a little bit surprised with who you've got as your 2 goalkeepers.
Of course, I couldn't possibly do a team and not do something silly. I've obviously spoken loads for the last little while, so I'll run through this and then I'll hand over quickly to you, Andy, because I know you've got some additions to it as well. But the team we have here, now I'm not wildcarding, so this was me just taking a look if I would wildcard in Gameweek 9. Ward and Everson in goal. It's a price thing and a fixtures thing. I know Ward is terrible. If Everson gets his spot, then brilliant, maybe he's better. But it's a compromise to make the rest of the team work. The rest of the team then is Reece James, Williams, Cancelo, Trippier and Alexander-Arnold at the back. Of course, that's that Trent, Cancelo, James triple up that you want. Trippier in there as well. And Williams is your backup on the bench. Game week 12 is when you want him. Zaha in there, which I think is probably in everyone's team. I've got Martinelli mostly for the value proposition still, but fair enough if you wanted to drop him in your own. I think most will have Maddison. I've got Andreas as, of course, the cheap option we all have. And I do have Salah. Now, if I was originally Game Week 9 wildcarding when I wonder if I would have dropped these 2, but maybe I've just been scared. So I have put them in here. So I guess this is a Salah team. If you want to build one without, fair enough. And then the front 3 are pretty common. It's Mitrovic and Haaland, which I think everyone will have. And then Solanke. If you can afford Tony, this would leave me specifically with 0 in the bank. If you can afford Tony, absolutely fair enough. Go there. The reason you have Solanke is he's 5.7. He gets 90 minutes. He's on penalties. He's got some great fixtures, so I do think he'll provide value for that. And then crucially, Game week 12 is when you want him. If you line this team up and see when they play, you would bench Solanke a lot, but you need him in 12, and he's a great option for 12. But with that being said, please rip it to shreds for me.
I mean, I get about making the rest of the team work. I cannot understand why people will be wildcarded and getting Ward and Everson in. I know it's 7.9 million. They're so bad. I've never known a pair be so bad. And we've seen Ward, he's getting 1 point, isn't he? Pretty much every single week. I just don't get it. I don't get being able to do it. I would be more than happy to have Everson on my bench, but I just can't see myself, if I was doing it, picking Ward. Yeah. I just can't do it.
So I think it's a bit like if you don't like Solanke, entirely fair enough. But the question is, do you want Solanke and Zaha, or Tony and Gordon? Or maybe on the flip side, Ward and Everson and Cancelo, or Ward and Everson and, Walker, or whatever. Entirely fair to make it go a different direction. I think there are some compromises that need making. And you know me, right? I will do silly things when the fixtures look nice and everyone thinks Leicester are rubbish. I'll go the opposite direction just cause. But it seemed sensible to me. I'm not a bit like Solanke. You're not expecting a hat-trick every week. You're not expecting Leicester to keep any clean sheets.
Yeah.
But maybe you just take your 2 points and run. I don't know.
I mean, it's, aside from the goalkeepers, there's a lot of similarities here with the Game Week 8 wildcard teams that we've got. And the key difference really is that premium. So whilst Game Week 8, you're looking at KDB, some may have got Son or Kane. This one, it's firmly Haaland and Salah. That's the one there. But things like Zaha, Maddison, these are quite common. These are common players that were in game week 8 wildcards, or certainly in consideration. Mitrovic, obviously. Andreas is that cheap midfielder. James, Cancelo, Trippier. I think it's Alexander-Arnold is the other one as well. So this is much more of a 4-4-2. So Solanke would be benched. Now, a lot of wildcarders this week are looking to get Solanke in as in a 3-4-3 or a 4-3-3. They're looking to play him every week. And as Seb pointed out, Solanke, you might want to bench some weeks, even though Bournemouth's fixtures are good. So I mean, I was looking at in terms of expected goals, team goal threat, and Bournemouth are the worst, with 3.27 over the season. To put that into context, Aston Villa are the second worst, and their expected goal threat is almost double that. And then you've got Southampton and Wolves, and then at the top, just put it in context again, Manchester City expected goals of 15, and they've scored 23. So I mean, they're the worst team in terms of goal threat. But
the one small sliver of defense I have there is their fixtures have also been quite tough.
Yes,
I'm not saying they would top the league, but maybe they wouldn't be so bad.
Well, no, it was more backing up your assertion that you might want to bench him. Because I know there are a lot of people on Twitter who are like, "Oh, we're going to get Solanke in, and I'm going to play him every week." Well, yeah, I mean, he's in the worst team in terms of attacking threat, so he's in a championship side basically.
I do agree with Seb as well, by the way, in terms of they've had bad fixtures, and obviously Parker's gone as well. Parker is an incredibly defensive manager, and all of a sudden now Billings coming in and he's being effective like he was in the Championship. Solanke's playing in his actual preferred role as opposed to playing in midfield or on the left wing. So I think for 5.7 million, he's getting so much hate on social media, and it's because people hate it when a low-owned player is starting to become popular. And I think 5.7 million for a third striker is gold. I think it's absolute gold. Well, Why not?
After you, Joe.
I was going to say, do you have a table to put up of the best 5.5?
How did you know I had that available?
Is this a good segue to put that in?
It is. So, I mean, obviously we were on Seb's wildcard a little bit there, but this does kind of link into it because that third, striker position is probably one of the most contentious ones that people are looking at. So, this is actually ordered in terms of XGI non-penalty per 90, and Mopé is top. Which is very strange. No, sorry, he's top based on minutes per XGI non-penalty. Yes. So Mopé is top at Everton.
He's only had a couple of starts and scored.
Isak is top. Isak is second, but he is obviously injured. Wilson is next, which is quite an interesting one with Isak injured. Mitrovic is fourth. Tony is fifth. Then there's Daka, Watkins, Welbeck, and Solanke near the bottom there, which kind of builds on what Joe was saying about them being one of the worst attacking teams in the league at the moment. But it's interesting there that obviously Mopé is there towards the top. But it does it's whether you think Bournemouth now going into their nicer fixtures, not under Parker anymore, are going to start potentially performing. But how much do you really want your 5.7 million striker to perform? You're not going to want him to score every week. You're going to want him to score once every 3-4 games would be pretty good, I would say. But hang on, Seb. Hang on.
I was going to agree with you.
But obviously, in Seb's potential wildcard there, you've got the room to be able to bench Solanke anyway. So is Solanke a good move if you are able to bench him, or is he a good move to play him every week? That's kind of what we're looking at, isn't it? Because someone like Tony, you'd be quite happy to have him as your third striker, playing him every week in potentially a 3-4-3 or a 4-3-3, whatever position you're playing. So, Joe, if we come to you first, because Seb is right, he's talked an awful lot tonight. What's your kind of gut saying? If Solanke's there, 5.7 million, you do have to take that into consideration. But would you rather have a Tony or a Mitrovic there?
Yeah,
but obviously you might be having to have Ward or Everson in goal as well.
Well, I wouldn't. It depends what if you need the money. So he's 5.7. So if you've got a plan for using that money, I personally in my team, I don't particularly. So that's a big reason to get Solanke in his price. But if you look at the expected goal involvement non-penalty per 90. So he has scored and he has assisted, and he's only started 4 times, but his expected goal involvement non-penalties is 0.16, which is very low. When you look at Mbappe, who's only had 2 starts and he scored, and his expected goal involvement is 0.65. So that proves that the quality of Mbappe's goal is very high in comparison to Solanke's there. This is a small sample. We're looking at a small sample. This is, only a handful of starts, really, if you're looking across the season. But in my case, I've got Isak here. So I'm looking, he's had 3 starts, 2 goals. He didn't impress me in that last game, but then he's got injured. So it looks like he's out for a while. So I'm looking at a replacement. And I don't own Tony. I've got Mitrovic, I've got Haaland. And I look at Tony and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to get a really good output. He's had 47 points here. He's had 7 starts. So he's nailed on. He's 5 goals. Expected goal involvement, non-penalty, 0.45 per 90, that is. So much higher than Solanke. So if I'll be getting in a player that I'm just quite happy to play each week, and I am set up really for a 3-4-3. So if I got Solanke in, I'd be pretty much sort of either committed to get him in or sharing minutes or sharing starts with, I don't know, Pereira or someone like that, or one of my cheaper defenders. So it's not ideal, it's not optimal. So for me personally, I don't know Tony. Tony is my top choice to replace Isak with. I didn't put him in. Neil Mbappé's fabulous stats, put himself there. But Mbappé, Everton, I think, are looking better at the moment. So Neil Mbappé, I think, is an option to consider as a differential. Daka, Leicester. So Leicester's fixtures are really good. And I don't have a problem with Leicester going forward. It's just at the back they're rubbish. So getting Daka in, it's just an X minutes question there. Will he share those minutes with Vardy, Iheanacho? So that's the issue there. Villa's fixtures are good. Watkins is, an option there. And Welbeck at Brighton, I don't know. Will Welbeck be an option at Brighton under Zerbi? I don't know. Up in the air. But these are names to throw in there that could be a good, interesting differential. But I think for Mitrovic and Tony, I think are the key ones there. I think, and so I'm gonna get Tony in this week.
I'm gonna stick my head out. I'm gonna do it, and I'm gonna say I think Solanke's a really good pick, and I'm gonna say it. One, because he's got the X minutes, he's got the penalties and all that kind of stuff. I almost think you can kind of discount the stats for him and the data for him so far because of Parker, because of where he was playing. He was basically playing left mid at some points during games. Like Kiefer Moore was playing up top, and he scored a few goals as well. And I think, looking forward with the fixtures and things, I think he's going to do okay. I think he's going to do okay based on his price. And
would you play him
the
every
big
week?
thing is whether you would. I think with the fixtures aren't bad. Like, and you look at it and think, up to the World Cup, would I be playing him up to the World Cup in every game? And I think there are worse options. I think if you're looking at that's your price point, and would you play a 5.7 million mid instead of him? I think I go with Solanke, it's because he's on pens as well.
If you've got a choice between, so you've got Mitrovic and Haaland and Kane. So if you had a choice between getting Solanke or Tony in this week, for some reason you needed to get a striker this week, which of those would you get, Tony or Solanke?
Well, obviously it's based on price for me, because if I'm looking to downgrade Kane, it's who would free up enough money for me to be able to get to Salah. It probably won't be Tony, because I don't think I'd have enough. But Tony's exactly the same as Solanke in terms of he's got 90 minutes, he's got penalties and everything as well, hasn't he? So
apart from the extra points and goal threat
and the fact that he's been playing up front, and the fact that he's had nicer fixtures, all those things.
And
so
Solanke's
now got
and in the England
fixtures.
squad.
Solanke's a very good player. People forget this. Like he's a different player to when he was in the Prem before, and he played very, very well last year in the Championship. But like I said, he's had horrific fixtures. Parker didn't really attack those fixtures at all. He just played a defensive way. He played Kiefer Moore up top, Solanke in midfield. So I look at it and think I don't get the hate for him at all.
If they were the same price, though, who would you get, Tony or Solanke?
I'd love to
do
jump in
both
there,
5.7.
I think, if you don't mind, I think that's the thing. Obviously, they're not the same price, and that's so. I don't think anyone's saying is Solanke is nailed on like a Mitrovic or a Haaland or something. It is for want of a better word, a compromise. It's the value proposition he allows, and it means you have a Trent or a Cancelo or a Zaha over a Gordon. Well, Gordon is 5.6, so that's a reasonable comparison. I think that's the thing. In isolation, yeah, get Tony. But if you get Tony, you can't have one of those defenders or one of those midfielders. And crucially, in game week 12, Tony has Chelsea, I think. Solanke has a better fixture. And that is when most people are going to need that slot. So for me, I edge Solanke. But yeah, if you were like free hitting this week, of course you get Tony.
Yeah, I do agree. Obviously, it'd be lovely to... They would never be the same price because Tony is in a better team.
No, obviously
and he's obviously got, especially the last couple of seasons, he's got more of the pedigree, hasn't he? But
I just think, you have a plan, and so Solanke fits into that. But I've seen a lot of people, particularly on FPL Twitter, just saying, "Oh, we're going to get Solanke in," but unless they've got a plan to use that money, a definite plan to use that money, then just get the better player.
Yeah. Thomas Shaw's just said in the chat, by the way, and I'm going to say the same. Billing, if he carries on playing like he is, he is that most forward midfielder in that attack. They play those two defensive midfielders, and then we've got Billing. He did incredibly well last year in the Championship, and he is that aerial threat as well.
Yeah, he's
always about the area. So
I was going to say, if I was going to go for going for those Bournemouth fixtures, I would go for Billing as a possible first sub or play him every week because I think he's the one who's going to get you the FPL points. But as you say, Solanke's on penalties, and penalties is a different beast. I wonder, some of the lesser teams don't get as many penalties as the likes of Liverpool, for example. They just don't have those types of players to win penalties. They haven't got a Jack Grealish who'd fallen over.
They used to, didn't they? They used to, when they had like Ryan Fraser and people like that that were in the team, they used to win a few. But that was when Callum Wilson was obviously getting them all, wasn't it?
Yes.
I think an interesting extension from this, sort of linking back into the wildcard we presented as well, is if, Solanke and then the goalkeepers I put forward are this compromise to make the team work, which one, say you had to lose one of those, you're not happy with both, which one would you lose? So, for example, for me, I like Whiter maybe going forward if you can't bear Leicester goalkeepers. And obviously, Joe has put Tony forward instead of Solanke. Where would you make that compromise? And obviously, you're going to have to downgrade like a Cancelo or a Trent or a Zaha or something.
Was that to me? Sorry.
Oh, both of you. I'm interested to know which one of these you would go for if you had to, and which one you'd drop.
Which one of these players I would?
So your choice is to make your wildcard work. You have to either have Ward and Everson or Solanke up front.
Well, I would probably try and do something which I similarly did in game week 8, but in game week 9, if you're not getting Salah in, have money to get Salah in. So currently, I have money to get Salah in, and by getting Tony in, who's 0.1 more, 0.2 more, it still leaves me with money to get Salah in, and so that's the issue. That's why leaving $1 million or so in the bank was advantageous in game week 8. Whether or not you use it or not, it just gives you that option. So in game week 9, if you were wildcarding this week and you're not getting Salah in, but you want to get Salah in, then you don't need to mess around with getting Solanke in. Just make sure you've got $1 million in the bank somewhere else. So where that compromise would be, I don't know. Could be Cancelo, could be Alexander-Arnold, could be Trippier. These are players that you don't necessarily need.
So Joe's done a Seb and sat on the fence. Yeah. Andy, give me an answer. You've got to pick Solanke or Ward and Everson to make the rest of your team work.
Yeah, it's Solanke for me. 100%. From somebody that went with Ward and Everson at the beginning, and Joe bombarded me with insults every single week I had them because he could not understand how I had them.
I've given up now.
It's not good. It is not good.
It's like saying, would you like to be shot in the head or perhaps the stomach?
And also,
Ward and Everson.
If you're using those funds and you're spreading them out elsewhere, you are not changing those keepers till World Cup. So you are stuck with Ward and Everson to the World Cup.
I don't think I commented on the Ward Everson. I just wouldn't. It's just so I can't even look at it.
Yeah.
It's too disgusting.
Anyway, moving on to the community team, Seb. Talk us through the community team. Oh God, look at it. Look at it. Pope, captain. Pope captain. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so glad. 'Cause it probably would have gone ahead of me.
Imagine
What
if
could
that
have been
come
with
off.
that vice captain on Williams?
Can you
Imagine if
before
it
you
had come
talk,
off.
by the way, could you just tell me where it is in the league so we can ask people whether they're beating it, please?
Oh, 1 second. I absolutely can make fun
Pope
of my
captain.
stupidness amongst
Christ alive.
ourselves. The Scoutcast Community Team is 187th in the Community League
Ooh.
with a red arrow because some nutter captained the goalkeeper. Yeah, I mean, imagine if that had come off there. Captain Pope and I had triple Newcastle. I would have pretended it was all on purpose.
God.
I don't think I could have convinced you of that.
So what we thinking? What we thinking for the community team then?
So we wildcarded, of course. I'll just run through it quickly for people on the audio side of this. We have Pope, captain, fantastic. Trippier, Williams, we played this week because our bench didn't play at all. Cancelo at the back as well. We have Andreas, Martinelli, Maddison, and De Bruyne. Isak up front, obviously injured for a couple of weeks. Mitrovic and Haaland. And then a bench of Ward, who will stay there, I suspect. Zaha, Gehi, and James. So I'd imagine our bench are playing, probably for Williams, Andreas, and I guess we could bench Isak if we wanted, but maybe that's where the transfer will be focused. We'll, of course, run nominations and polls as usual, but what would you two go for here?
Yeah, I would look at Isak to... I don't. Is there any money in the bank with this one?
It was 0.5, I think, off the top of my head. I
Okay.
will check for you now.
Okay, so there's no route to getting flexibility to get Salah in unless... So Isak to Tony would lock you out for a potential Salah move should you want to do that until you can find more money. So in this case, Solanke could be an option here because, as you said, the bench, you can bench Solanke or you could just bench Isak because you can play Zaha instead of Andreas, Gehi instead of Williams, and James instead of whoever else you've got.
Palace
I mean,
do
you've
have
got-
Chelsea this week, don't they? It's 2 weeks' time. They've got the good fixtures, so we maybe don't play at least Gehi this week, I guess.
Yeah, okay. So
Sweet.
you replace Williams and Andreas with Zaha and James, and so you would still be looking at removing Isak. If you didn't want to get Salah in and
Say
you
it,
didn't
Joe.
have that plan, I would go to Tony. If for some
Say it.
reason you need the money, you're going to have
Say
to
it.
do it.
What are you
No.
gonna have to do? What are you gonna have to do, Joe?
You have to get Solanke in.
Yes. Oh,
But
Just clip that. That was fine.
have
That's a good one.
have a cold shower after it.
oh God.
Comment in the chat just saying, okay, I'm on here for chat.
all
not
cheap
slanky
striker
propaganda.
section. Joe's going, don't get Solanke. Don't get
Yeah,
Solanke.
no.
This is what have you noticed?
Well,
He keeps going you.
I
He
said
doesn't
if
say
it's
we.
part-
This is
if it's part of a plan that involves wanting to get Salah in, you need to find that money and Isak to that. But I would probably, I mean, still with this team because this team's basically my team. Looking at it,
especially with Solanke.
so I would do what I'm doing. Isak to Tony, good striker to good. Well,
He's not even sat on the
Reasonable.
fence. He's just strolling back and forth through the gate. He's trying one
Solanke-
side, then the other.
Solanke, if it was part of your desperate plan to get Salah in, but no,
guess-
it's up to the community though, isn't it?
You
This-
keep saying,
exactly.
exactly. You keep saying you as well. This is we, Joe. Yeah,
No,
don't
it's
you
not
come
me,
pass
no
blame
we.
onto us.
I'm then looking at yeah, it's Pope captain. That's not a we, it's you.
No, that was we. That was definitely we. That one.
Yeah.
It is we, not.
Hey.
I think the biggest thing is what we're going to be doing with De Bruyne moving forward, and it's I think Salah's the we're going to need to do something, aren't we? And we don't want to block ourselves out getting Salah. So
No.
I think losing Isak for Tony's a great move for this week. Solanke's the move if we want to be able to get Salah later on, unless we want to downgrade somewhere else. But I don't think we're going to be able to really. So
We did
Is-
kind of set this up with that plan in mind. Doesn't mean it can't
Yeah.
change.
You
But we
can-
did try when we
do
were
you know
setting
what?
this up.
Do you know
to
what?
set some
Because it's a
strategy as well.
community team, and like our manager with the community team last season, as in Reckless, I would be tempted to go for Brozier and bet that Potter's going to
No.
like him for some minutes.
No, don't do that. That's
So hang
that's
on.
just crazy
we're looking
speculation.
we're looking at Isak to Tony is one of the options. Isak to Solanke so we can get Salah later on is an option.
Uh-huh.
And then Isak to Brozier as the
Yeah,
wildcard option at the end.
Or
Right, cool.
Daka, I would bet on Daka. Great fixtures. He's going to get minutes, 5.7.
Cool.
I just think there's other options if you want to save money.
Okay.
But I would perhaps left $1 million in the bank just to ease those pressures.
Can I point out that Ward and Everson also have those great fixtures that Daka has? Any interest? No, no one.
They're not
No.
to score goals, though.
No, that's just not never.
Well, maybe,
gonna...
mate. Maybe.
I mean,
Own goals.
I don't know. I'm having a pop at Ward and Everson, but I've got Ward on my bench. He's sitting there.
Would you start Ward this week?
No, ever. Even
No.
even if my first pet, which was a goldfish that died, was the goalkeeper choice, I would play him over Ward. So
wow. Maybe that's why the
Goldie
died, mate. They're not meant to go in goal.
No.
I mean, speaking of, we've got bus teams up in a minute. I actually went Everson as well with you, Andy, because I wanted the 0.1.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of thinking, well, if Ward does get dropped, at least I've got Everson.
Yeah. Right, moving on to bus teams. So my bus team is up on the screen now. So I got Pope in goal. I got Zuma, the cat kicker, in defence. I got Cancelo and Trippier. Then I've also got Bowen, Martinelli, Ward-Prowse and Maddison. Maddison, that fixture against Forest is looking juicy. And then we got Haaland as captain at the moment, with Kane and Mitrovic up top. Andreas Pereira, Perisic and Nico Williams on the bench with Everson as well. Fairly happy. I was looking at this when I was doing all the plans for my wildcard. This wasn't the biggest week for me. It was moving into game week 10 and 11 and 12 that I was like, these are the weeks that I'm going to start gaining, hopefully. So I'm not feeling brilliant about this week, but it's not looking too bad. I think it's probably going to be quite a low scoring game week, to be honest, with Arsenal and Spurs playing each other and City and Man United playing each other as well. I feel like it'll be quite low scoring. I know, Joe, you've done the captaincy video from this week as well. I'm putting it on Haaland. I'm not.
Yeah. Well,
not feeling 100% about it at the moment, but he's going to be 170.
Yeah, people go back and watch that. Everyone who's watching and listening, the captaincy video, because myself and Tom talk about that, and Haaland is our top choice because of who he is, because of his history against Manchester United. His dad Leeds. He's been brought up as a Leeds fan and a Man City, and he's not. In an interview, who are you most looking forward to play? He said, I can barely say the words Manchester United. He is up for this. Also, there were some people saying that Martinez had played against him in the Champions League or something like that, or Bundesliga or somewhere. But that was while, arguably, Haaland was in a lesser team with less creative players, so he didn't have the likes of De Bruyne supplying him, or Foden coming in, or Cancelo whipping in those crosses. So I think he's a great captain shout. But I think Maddison is the other one. Last game of the week as well against Nottingham Forest. He's really good. He always gets returns against. I think his last 5 encounters. I can't remember the exact thing, but he basically does very well against promoted sides. He's going to get some return there, and it's the last game, so it gives you hope right to the end of the game week.
Always does well against the top 6. Always does well against promoted sides.
He does well against everyone until
captain, mate.
He does well against everyone until he doesn't, and then you remove him.
I also went against Haaland captaincy last week, and obviously came out well from it. I don't feel like I'm going to be able to do that again. And
it's horrible to mention effective ownership, but when it's so high in his case, he's effectively almost like a whole player against you, and he's in your team. So a player in your team, one of your 11 players, is effectively a player against you. So you want them to get injured, you want them to fail, and that's horrible. When it's like effective ownership is like 120, 130, you can pretty much stomach that. But 180, 190, that's hot. He's indeed a spy in the midst there. So I think even owning the likes of Maddison is good enough this week, I think.
Lovely. Moving on to your team, Joe. So talk us through your team. There's a few similarities, few differences. Okay,
I know. I'm doing the thing that I hate, and I have a go at you about all season about attackers v defenders, and this is the week where it's like it's like when you buy a new house, you make a compromise. Oh, I like all those things, but that downstairs toilet's a bit funny, or something like that. And this is my downstairs toilet week, basically. So I've got a lot of defenders against attackers, and that's not going to be the case going through for the rest of the season towards the World Cup. But this is one of those times. So I've got to hope that those very attacking defenders do me proud. And I've got to hope that Pope gets all his lovely saves there. So I've got Pope in goal in a 3-4-3. Cancelo, James hops off the bench, Trippier, And then I have Zaha, Maddison, De Bruyne, and Martinelli. And then I've got Mitrovic, Haaland, who's my captain up top, and Isak, who I think I'm going to get Tony in for, unless I hear otherwise with the team news. On my bench, I've got Ward, who's rubbish, Andreas, who's a great first sub at home against Newcastle. Then Patterson, who's injured, who would have been amazing. And I was so pleased that he got me points last time out. And then Nico Williams there, who's fine. So yeah, I'm gonna have to. I've got to work towards Game Week 12 a bit. I've got to keep some of those City and Arsenal players in mind, and I've got to keep injured players in mind as well. So a priority really is to get Isak out, and Tony, I think, is the best alternative around that pricing.
Lovely. Yeah, you do have a few players playing against each other this week.
I know, I've got quite a few.
Interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, Pope, I don't mind so much because he is saves and bonuses, so that's not ideal. I think Mitrovic will score. I think he scored tonight for his country. Yeah, once again, James against Zaha, that's annoying. That's annoying, but Zaha can score against Chelsea easily. James can score against Crystal Palace easily. So you've got to hope for that.
GM360
Andy
in the chat has just put, why don't you play Ward if you're worried about Mitrovic against Pope?
Because I genuinely think Pope will get save points. So Pope concedes, maybe concedes 2, gets save points. And the way that Newcastle have been under him has been very similar to Burnley. Lots and lots of shots and he managed to save a lot of them. Mitrovic will probably score 2 of those good ones, but he'll get lots and lots of saves, I hope, which will be more than Ward will get. He'll concede against Forest because he's rubbish, and he'll get no bonus. He'll get no saves because he doesn't make saves. So
we know what will happen. It'll be 1-0 Fulham. Defender scores.
Yes. Thomas Shaw has posted something, but I think has it been deleted in the comment? But he was saying it has been deleted because there's a rude word in it. But he was saying that Pope was rubbish. I'm going to rephrase him for England last night, but that was obviously different team. But yes, he was. I thought he was as well, and I was very nervous as an England fan with Pope there. He is not very good with when the ball comes to him and him trying to pass it out from the back under pressure, and Germany spotted that and were going for him. So all the team needs to do in the Premier League is if he's going to attempt that again, just keep running at him because you're going to score.
We will see what happens. Seb, moving on to your best team, my friend. Talk us through it.
Sure. So once again, very familiar for people who wildcarded in 8, I suspect. I have Pope in goal, Cancelo, James, and Trippier at the back. Bowen, Maddison with a vice captaincy, Saka and Martinelli, the Arsenal double up in midfield. Then Captain Haaland, Kane and Mitrovic with a bench of Everson, Andreas, Shah and Nico Williams. And I guess, I don't think there's any real lineup decisions to make there. Saka and Martinelli against Tottenham isn't ideal, but it's a means to an end. Maddison, vice captain, pretty comfortable with captaining Haaland. Maddison's got a lovely fixture. I'm happy enough just to have him. I would back Haaland to outscore him this week. And I guess if I thought it was really close, Joe brings EO into it. Sure, I would bring that into my decision-making if I thought, it was neck and neck between the two of them. And I'm rolling the transfer most likely similar to yourself, Andy, because there's a plan that can't fail to go wrong.
Exactly. Lovely stuff. Right. Now, this is going to be, so we're actually quite over the timings that I wanted tonight, but that's fine because obviously, we've gone into some really lovely analysis tonight. So what we're going to do, we're going to bring back what we used to do, as little words as possible to answer your question tonight. Okay, so literally like 1 or 2 words to answer a question. So people in the chat, can you please drop us some questions that can be answered really quickly? So in like 1 or 2 words. That would be absolutely lovely. Obviously, Robbo's back on the screen with his hand up because he already has a question. Right there. FPL Power 5 says, will there be price rises and drops during the World Cup? Can we make transfers during that month or does it lock? No, you can definitely make transfers because it's free wildcard. But can you is there price rises? I'm assuming there is.
It's not confirmed, but assume yes.
It's not confirmed. Assume there is technically, but as we've seen the last couple of weeks, I don't think reality there will be any because everyone will be on a wildcard.
Also,
That's true.
it's obviously one game week technically, so all those
Yeah.
rules will apply. Maximum of 3. The threshold will go up every time you have a rise, stuff like that.
Yeah. John Cahill says, "Do I start Ward or Henderson this game week, Joe?"
Oh, Henderson, because of
Yeah.
save points.
Yeah, and Seb.
Yeah, Ward, because
Yeah, I knew you
it's
were going
funny.
to say Ward. Boring says, "Do I go with Salah, KDB, or Son?" Seb.
Assuming now, I guess I would say Salah because I think it's better preparation for the future.
Yeah, and Joe.
Salah, then KDB, then Son.
Ooh.
If you want to do that move, hokey
Ooh,
cokey.
Yeah, like it. Bernardo says, "Do I do Martinelli to Harvey Barnes for the next 4 game weeks, Joe?"
No.
No. And Seb?
No.
No. Ooh. Tony, I think that was Tony D. Yes, Tony D says, "Do I do Madison captain, Seb?"
I assume you have Haaland, so no.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Joe?
Yes, I'll give it. Yeah, yes, I would say if you want to be different, and I know he does like to be different with his team, then I think he's good. Last game gives you hope all the way through the weekend.
Nice.
That's valid.
Yeah. Rob Allen says, "Do I keep Son? Yes or no, Joe?"
Yeah, keep him. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like Son's a target for a few weeks' time, so he's good.
And Seb?
Yeah, keep him. Make him Salah later.
Yeah. Tashan says, "Which goalkeeper would you have on wildcard, Seb?"
Ooh.
Well, obviously I did Ward and Everson, but if you hate that, Guaita.
Yeah. Joe?
And a wildcard Pickford if he's fit.
Ooh, like
expected
it.
goals prevented all matches. He's higher, and then you've got Allison and then Pope. So if you can afford it, Pope, because he's fit. Pickford, if he's fit, I think is a good option because you can do Pickford Begovic if you're on a wild card, 4.5 and 4, the same ones, and I think you're going to get lots of lovely save points. Can I mention Sarr as well? Wolves fixtures are good if you've got the money. I think he is very good, and he is also in the plus of expected goals prevented this season.
Nice. Colin Bugler says, "Do I do Zaha in game week 9 or game week 10, Joe?"
I got him in game week 8. Get him in now. I mean, you're going to want to get him in. If you've got no other fires to fight, just get him in. I mean, if you've got something else to do, then obviously do that and wait. But I mean, he's a good player that you want to get in. Their fixtures are amazing up to the World Cup.
Seb?
It depends on your team, blah, 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 but game week 10.
Yeah. FPL Harry, hello FPL Harry, says, "Do these transfers act like wildcard or just unlimited transfers?" I think it's unlimited transfers because if you do a wildcard, then you can't do a chip after, but you can play a chip straight away after the World Cup's ended. So I think it's just unlimited transfers, I think.
Can I ask a question that was someone else?
Oh, yes.
At the beginning of the stream, they asked this question and they haven't appeared back again. But they definitely want to know about expected. They wanted to know about cheap defenders who we had our eye on. So game week 8, Patterson was popular, and Emerson and these players. And so looking at those players, expected goal involvement 4.5 and under. Adam Webster. 2 clean sheets. He's created a chance so far. It could be gold under Zerbi. Zamora, is that right? At Bournemouth, 4.4.
Yeah, Zamora's good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, 6 chances created over the last 4 matches. And so Webster had 1 chance created there. Tofolo at Forest. I don't think you would go for him. He's 4.5. Castagna at 4.4 at Leicester. If you fancied a slight attacking threat there, he has created a couple of chances the last 4. Nico Williams and Patterson if he's fit, which he's not. So I think Webster is a good option to go for. But I am massively biased about Brighton. So yeah.
There you go. And last question is from Lego Mane, who's in the chat. Hello, Lego Mane. By the way, now we've got you in the chat. Thank you so much for all the times we've used your fixture tickers and things. You're amazing. Anybody, make sure you give him a follow on Twitter. He is definitely worth it. Lego Mane says, "Who's the highest ceiling differential Isak replacement? Not Tony, Solanke, Mitro, or Premium. So who would be your striker of choice if you weren't going for one of them?" Joe. Daka. Seb.
Bamford.
Yeah.
Ooh,
he's good.
Nice. Lovely stuff. Right. So we're going to finish off there. Let me just go back to the main screen. Here it is. thank you so much for everybody that's joined us tonight. I hope you've enjoyed it. I think we did quite a lengthy kind of analysis in the middle there, but actually it was lovely. I was just sat here kind of listening the whole time, but it kind of time just flew by, which is lovely. So I hope you enjoyed your evening. Joe, I hope you enjoyed your evening too.
Yeah, great. That was great. And yeah, good luck everyone with their game week. It's going to be really interesting, potentially really high scoring or potentially really low scoring because everyone's going to be knackered coming back from the international break.
Yeah, exactly. And Seb, I hope you enjoyed your evening too.
Yeah, very much so. Thank you for letting me ramble on so much. I guess I'm making up for the few weeks I'll miss before. I think it'll be like Christmas before I'm back. So Merry Christmas.
And Seb, obviously, I'm sure people will put a few love hearts and things in the chat to say we'll miss you, but we will be welcoming you back soon. And for everybody in the chat and everybody listening on the pod as well, we do wish you luck in the next game week, and we will see you again next Tuesday, where, as we said, we're going to have somebody different on instead of Seb. But we'll see how that goes. You never know. We might be begging for Seb back before you know it. Right, we'll see you all again very, very soon. Bye-bye.